All right, happy Monday. We are in the last and final week of hard review. Can you even believe? So, this week we're going to really hit up those natural resources, which I know we remember all about, and then a little bit on natural hazards, and then we're just going to do some light review here and there because the week after this, you start your MAAP testing. Very exciting. The end is near. Let's finish out strong, shall we? So, today, like I said, we're going to be talking about those natural resources. So, a natural thing that we can find in nature that we can use to help ourselves, that is what a natural resource is all about. So, this is again anything that's going to be in nature that we are going to use for either usually for electricity or power or anything like that. Now, we remember there are two different categories of natural resources. We can have resources that are renewable, so renewable resources. And these are any natural resources that we are never going to run out of. They are constantly being replaced in a short amount of time. So, this is like your wind, your water, sunlight. We are not going to run out of those no matter how much of it we use. We're just going to constantly have some. The only drawback is that it can be a little bit expensive. So, remember talking about like those solar panels, or if we are talking about biomass, any renewable resource is usually a little bit more expensive to use. And we're going to talk about that more tomorrow. But the good thing about renewable resources is not only are we never going to run out of them, but they're also better for the environment. They're not releasing any toxic chemicals into the air, which again, we'll talk about tomorrow. The other type of natural resource is the opposite, our non-renewable resources. So these are resources that we are going to eventually run out of. They take a super, super, super long time to be replaced because they take millions of years to form. So once we use these, they're pretty much out. They're also not so great for the environment because, again, non-renewable resources, we're going to be releasing bad chemicals into the air or into the soil or into the water. So they're not so great. But the reason we use them so much is they are so cheap. It does not cost much money to get a hold of these natural resources or use them. So this is why we typically cling to the non-renewable resources. Of course, so many efforts are being made to use more renewable resources and to make them cheaper to use, but still the norm is non-renewable. Now, the reason non-renewable resources take so long to be replaced is because they are made from fossils. So this is why we often call our non-renewable energy sources like our coal, our oil, or our natural gas. That's why we call them fossil fuels, because they're fuels that come from fossils. So what is going to happen is we know how fossils are made. We have something dead that was once alive and it is buried in that sedimentary rock and it eventually becomes a fossil. But if it goes through, and we know that to create a fossil, it already takes like millions of years. So after that fossil is formed, that fossil can then go through more intense heat, more intense pressure, and turn it into an actual oil or gas. So that is why they're called fossil fuels, because they're literally made from fossils. Kind of crazy, the stuff we're putting in our car, it's made of fossils. That's wild. So let's dive into it. Again, I just named what the non-renewable energy sources or what our fossil fuels are going to be, but just as a reminder, one of them is going to be coal. So this here is like a coal mine. This is where they had to dig deep into the ground to get that coal, which is just like a hard, it's pretty dirty rock, and you can usually burn it to create energy or to create power. So coal is definitely one of our non-renewable energy sources. It takes millions of years for this coal to form. The other type is that oil and natural gas. So this again is inside the rocks because it's formed by fossils. So we have to drill deep down into the rocks inside of the earth to actually drill it out to get what we know today is our gas. This is the gas that you put in the car, or you can have gas that you use for your stove top. That is also gas. So again, non-renewable. The kind we don't see as often and we really don't use it as often is nuclear energy. And again, you don't really need to know the details of nuclear energy because it's kind of dying anyway. We're not really using it nearly as much, but it's also like super complicated. So we're taking atoms of uranium and splitting it, and somehow, I don't even know how, it creates electrical energy. So this is what a nuclear power plant typically looks like. Just remember that's nuclear energy and it is non-renewable, so we cannot replace it. So let's move on to our renewable energy sources. So these are our sources that we are never going to run out of. We can have an unlimited supply of these sources, one of which is going to be solar energy, which remember, solar is just a fancy way of saying the sun. So in this case, we are using sunlight to create power, and we typically harness some power or energy from the sun by these solar panels, So that is renewable. The other renewable energy source we've talked about is wind energy. So energy from the wind, we're never going to run out of that, can be captured by these big wind turbines. So a big turbine or a windmill. So if you see a bunch of wind turbines, we call that a wind farm. So again, it is renewable. We're never going to run out of it, but these two things especially are very expensive to make. It takes a lot of money to make a solar panel. It takes a lot of money to make a wind turbine. But however, once we have it built, it's easy to capture those renewable energy sources, and again, we ain't going to run out of them. Two more renewable energy sources that we talked about is water. We are never, ever, ever going to run out of water because remember, with the water cycle, the water is constantly being recycled throughout the world, so we have it around us at all times in one form or the other. So the process to actually capture energy from flowing water, this is what we call that hydroelectric power, because the prefix hydro means water and we know what electric is, so hydroelectric. So again, you don't need to know the big details about this. Just remember that we capture that hydroelectric power through these dams. So if you put it, you need a fast flowing river or fast flowing water. The water will flow through that dam and turn a little turbine that will create power. So we can transfer power or energy through those power lines to give electricity. Pretty cool. So yeah, water, also renewable. Another thing that is renewable is that geothermal energy. So geo, we remember geo means earth, and thermal just means heat. So this is heat coming from really the magma inside Earth's surface, because we've talked all year about how hot it is if you drill down into the earth. So basically, the hot magma from inside the earth is going to heat up some water and turn it into steam and do something very similar as the dams over here and have it turn a little turbine to create some electricity. So you really want to be somewhere especially near like a plate boundary because you're going to have a lot of more movement going on inside the earth, so you're going to see a lot of heat. So it's a lot easier to capture that geothermal energy near like a plate boundary. So water and heat from inside the earth, also renewable. We ain't going to run out of it. The very last renewable energy source that we talked about is that biomass. And I think this is the hardest one to remember. But remember that bio, we talked about this nonstop. That prefix bio just means life. So here we are using the remains of something that was once alive, which we know is called that organic matter. So this can be wood from a tree or any type of scraps from a plant or food scraps or honestly even just like dead animals or poop. That's all organic matter, right? So what's happening with organic matter is we're actually going to burn it to create electricity. So we're going to take any of those remains of something that was alive, which we will obviously never run out of because things are constantly living on the earth and constantly leaving behind their scraps. So we're going to take all of that organic matter, burn it up to create electricity or energy. So that's really all we're going to review for natural resources today. I just wanted to refresh our memories on what is renewable, what is non-renewable and what the heck that even means. Here's your cheat sheet. It reminds you what's going on with renewable resources, what's their deal, and then what are the examples of those and ways you might see them pictured. I mean, we know what the sun looks like. I hope so. We've seen water before, right? So this one isn't nearly as difficult, but just a reminder of like what biomass resources could be. This is a geyser. So this is produced by heat from inside the earth. So you might see it pictured that way as well. So I just wanted to throw that in there. And then same thing with your non-renewables. Here's the deal with non-renewable resources, and here are your examples. This is a nuclear energy plant. This is a bunch of coal. This is like at a coal mine. This is them literally pumping the coal out of the ground and putting it in a pile. And this is just a big drill used to get oil and natural gas from the ground. So you might see it pictured like that as well. Okay, last thing you got to do today is your independent practice. Just two, I think, very easy slides. For this first one, just tell me what type of resource is pictured. So like for this very first one here, we've got the big blades on top of a tower, and to me, this looks like a wind turbine. So I would put this as wind energy being used. And you're just going to go down the row and label what they are. Not too difficult. For this one down here, you're going to read each example of a natural resource and tell me, is it renewable or non-renewable? So like I remember sunlight, we're never going to run out of sunlight, so I know that it is renewable. And you're just going to do that for all the way down. And if you're like, natural gas, I really can't remember, for the love of God, look at your cheat sheet. The answers are all right there. Once you're done with that, you're done. Just hit turn in, and I'll see you on Tuesday.